On the Mongolian steppe, a dim memory remains of the great Genghis Khan's exploits and conquests. His statues are found in a handful of places throughout Mongolia, and stories are told among the people of how he made the Mongols great. But besides that, not much is known of him. Most records from the time have since vanished or have degraded over the centuries, and his conquest happened only 800 years ago. What if I told you that 1500 years before him, people in his homeland ruled the world? Except, the customs and languages of these people were completely unlike his own. In 209 BC, these people and their empire would dominate Eurasia with their warriors, known to us by the Chinese name for them, the Xiongnu. Now, history in the steppe at this time is so obscure that nearly everything we know about the region is found in documents written by the Chinese and by vague remnants of the ancient cultures and languages that remain today. That being said, we know about a group of loosely aligned clans known as the Xiongnu Confederacy. In 209 BC, they would unite under a supreme leader and form the Xiongnu Empire. Here, they would ravage the Chinese Han dynasty so completely that they would necessitate the construction of the Great Wall of China. But who were the Xiongnu? Clearly, due to their name, we know that they were a confederation, a group of loosely connected tribes and peoples who would act together. In the Xiongnu's case, they united for the sake of power, either for conquest or self-defense, most likely a combination of the two. The tribes that made up the Xiongnu were a complex amalgamation of the different groups residing in Siberia at the time. First, and most prominent in the group were Turkic groups who had come into the region from the southwest. Additionally, Proto-Mongols who would come to dominate the region centuries later, Indo-European Scythians along with their long-lost sibling groups of the Afanasyevans, who would later become the Tokharians, and one other group, the Yeniseians. Now, unlike all the other groups who would later become famous and powerful for one reason or another, the Yeniseians would sink into obscurity. In fact, they would disappear completely from this region and from history for thousands of years, turning up later along the Yenisei River. Ironically, they didn't even originally live along the Yenisei River from which they get their name. After the Xiongnu, the Yeniseians would come into the limelight only 2 more times, with the Jie, and today with modern academics linking them to linguistic groups in America. Let's start off with the latter. Who exactly are the Yeniseians? To understand this, we must look at the Kets, the last Yeniseian group. The Ket people of central Siberia, who currently number around 1,000, are the last speakers of a Yeniseian language. Their language is polysynthetic and features complex verbal morphology, making it markedly different from their neighboring languages such as Russian, Selkup, or Evenki. But it doesn't stop there. In addition to their language, their way of life is unlike any of their neighbors. As discussed in another video, the Ket language relies heavily on prefixes attached to their verb, whereas the neighbors' languages do the opposite, attaching suffixes to their verbs. In addition to their linguistic differences, they have significant societal differences. Whereas the Kets have historically been hunter-gatherers, relying on wild animals and fish for food, their neighbors herd reindeer. While the Kets aren't similar to any of their neighbors, they do share uncanny similarities with groups thousands of miles away. One of the craziest and most fascinating ideas in historical linguistics is that the Ket people of Siberia might be distantly related, linguistically, to some native groups in North America. Specifically, we're talking about the Nahanneh language family, which includes languages like Navajo, Apache, Tlingit, and several others spoken in Alaska, Western Canada, and the southwestern US. The connection comes down to a theory proposed by linguist Edward Vida. After years of studying Ket, he noticed that despite its insane complexity, some of its patterns, especially in verb structure and core vocabulary, look surprisingly similar to features found in Nahanneh languages. These aren't your everyday vocabulary coincidences. Vida found consistent similarities in how the languages build verbs, use tones, and structure meaning. While the words themselves show thousands of years of divergence, the underlying systems show deep connections. The idea is that the ancestors of both the Ket and Nahanneh speakers were part of the same population living in Siberia thousands of years ago. If this theory is correct, it means that Ket is the last living relative in Eurasia of a language family that once stretched from Siberia all the way to the American Southwest. Now, the Ket are connected to another group, the Jie. The Jie were one of the 5 barbarians, active in northern China during the 4th century. Their exact origins are unclear, but the Jie are often thought to be descendants or offshoots of the Xiongnu, and many scholars believe they spoke a non-Indo-European, non-Turkic language, possibly related to Yeniseian. The only recorded remnant of the Jia people's native language is recorded in one sentence, which is a phonetic transcription from a Chinese historical text which translates as roughly, "Armies went out and will capture Bangkok." Early attempts to interpret the phrase assume that the Jia spoke an early form of Turkic, in line with the widespread assumption that most steppe nomads are Proto-Turkic or Mongolic. However, the Turkic reading of the phrase breaks down under scrutiny. The structure of the sentence does not resemble known Turkic syntax or vocabulary. No clear verb roots fit, in the morphology, how the parts of the sentence fit together, doesn't align with Turkic verb formation. A more promising explanation was offered by linguist Alexander Volvin, who suggested that the sentence could be more clearly understood if the Jia language belonged to the Yeniseian family, the same group as the modern Ket language. Volvin reconstructed the sentence in Proto-Yeniseian. Significantly for this theory, one of the verbs in the sentence, go toktong, matches with the Ket verb. Even the sound changes seem to match on to what we know about the Yeniseian languages. The Ket language has a relative, Pumpakol, of which around 60 words were recorded before it went extinct in the 18th century. Words cognate between the two languages show that a sound change from T to S or S to T occurred at some point. If you were to change the S's in Ket words into T's, then it would look extremely similar to the verb in the reconstructed sentence. Thus, the Ket verb, meaning they will catch, matches nearly perfectly with the Jia meaning and pronunciation given in the Chinese source. Not only does this interpretation make grammatical and semantic sense, but it also fits the morphological pattern found in Yeniseian verbs, which are known for their complex affixation systems. This single phrase, therefore, becomes more than just a dramatic historical anecdote. It's potentially one of the only recorded sentences in a now lost Yeniseian language that was once used by a ruling elite in northern China. If correct, it strengthens the argument that the Jia were not Turkic, but were descended from Yeniseian-speaking peoples, possibly from among the Xiongnu or the satellite tribes. This also fits with broader evidence suggesting that parts of the Xiongnu Confederacy included Yeniseian speakers. Over the course of the 2 millennia from the peak of the Xiongnu to the impending death of Ket, the last Yenisei language, the Yeniseians have moved a large distance from their original location. We can begin to get a sense of the original homeland of the Yeniseians by looking at hydrotoponymic evidence. Place names, especially the names of rivers and lakes, have remarkable staying power. Over generations and generations, hydronyms generally remain relatively the same, only changing with sound changes in the languages that speak them change. By analyzing the hydronyms of regions in northern Mongolia and Siberia, we can begin to see the ancient extent of the Yenisei people. Stretching from northern Mongolia, where they were members of the Xiongnu Confederacy, they would slowly wane over the course of time, gradually being assimilated into neighboring groups. Slowly but surely they would disappear. In Siberia, they would fare about the same, expanding at first to many regions far and wide, but would ultimately shrink down to the Ket's location today. It's fascinating to see how a group of such significance and prestige can completely fade and disappear over the course of time. Coming into history as the Xiongnu, who would conquer and rule over a large area, the Yeniseians were a significant geopolitical force. Gradually, as the Xiongnu Confederacy started to crumble, they would come into their own as the Jia, with armies moving at their command. As time progressed, however, their fate would turn and they would be pushed northwards, bringing their languages with them. In Siberia, they would gradually fade, but not before their language would be recognized and connected to languages in North America.